Okay, welcome to Tiny Habits for Adults with ADHD. We are so glad that you are here today. We have a panel of experts that is here to help you with your specific questions. We will be taking questions in the Q&A, and feel free to also type in the chat and we can help you there as well. So let's introduce our panel of experts today. They are all Tiny Habits coaches, and they have an area of expertise in ADHD. They help a lot of people, and many of them are living with ADHD symptoms themselves and managing them beautifully. So Sharon, let's have you hop on, tell us who you are, and share a little bit of your story and how it relates to ADHD. Actually, wait a minute. We planned something fun and I already forgot about it. Let's
on brand.
That's very on brand, right? On brand for ADHD.
And just pivot and redo, just like we do in Tiny Habits.
That's right. So here's what we're going to walk our talk here. We were talking beforehand about one of the most popular Tiny Habits recipes overall throughout all the coaches that I see, drinking water. And especially with this group of ADHD coaches, they were saying that this is a really, really important thing, drinking water. So after I sit at my computer, I will drink, take a sip of water, and celebrate.
Celebrate remembering, even if you don't remember the first time, right?
Yeah, if you don't remember. And I think we embedded another Tiny Habit recipe in there, but we modeled it, I will say, and that is this. After I forget what I was doing, or after I go in a different direction, I can, what was your phrase, Amy? Pivot and
keep on keeping on. There was probably some other wording.
Reiterate something.
Pivot and refocus, right? So that's a good life skill to have anyway, even if you're not managing symptoms of ADHD. So Sharon, introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sharon. I am a very proud Tiny Habits coach. I was brought to Tiny Habits by way of my business that I started this time last year. So it's called Shelpful. And it started because it's like 10 o'clock at night, mean mugging myself in the mirror, judging myself for all the things I got done for work and my kids and nothing for myself. Still wearing, I think, the workout clothes that I was wearing that I never worked out in. And I just needed more support. I felt like I didn't have the tools and the support and somebody that kind of was invested in me. So I started this company called Shelpful, which is an instant accountability buddy service. In starting that, we were swarmed with people with ADHD saying this is what I needed. And in that swarm, I realized that I myself had ADHD and had been told by 3 or 4 doctors throughout my life that I did not, because I did well in school and work. So I'm just kind of at the age of 37, new diagnosis. I'm a year into it. I've learned so much, and Tiny Habits as a tool and as a coach have been transformative for me. And the biggest reason is just shifting from this all or nothing attitude, where I just was hating on myself because I didn't do a small thing or anything for myself and didn't have the frame of mind that allowed me to get just one small thing done that day and feel good about it.
Panelists, show of hands. Who learned late in the life or later in life that they had ADHD? All right, so if you're listening here, you are not alone. If you just learned or learned late or feel like maybe you've been judging yourself for most of your life about why can't you do this or why can't you do that, and are searching. So we're here to tell you that really you're not alone. Many of the coaches up here learned late, and you can pivot and refocus. And we're going to give you some tools today to do that. Jeff, introduce yourself.
Hey now, my name is Jeff Gervitz. I'm based in Toronto, Canada. So I'm not an ADHD coach proper. I run a gym here, and when I connect the dots looking back, this all started. I wasn't ever a gym guy. I was always like a martial arts guy. I like to move. And when I was in my 30s, I remember just thinking, this has been so important for me to be able to move around and exercise. I feel better. I think better when I'm doing this. How am I going to be able to do this as an old guy? And that question led me down a path that eventually kind of, took me into the world of fitness. And one of the ways this has been articulated to me, and I think is really connects, is people with ADHD. We have a deficit for nature, movement, and meaning, and I think we sort of owe it to ourselves to crank up things in all three of these categories and ask the question of how we can be at our best. So a lot of what I do now is apply principles from exercise into elevating your ability to focus or regulating your mood. And I'll be happy to share this with you. But that's my quick and dirty intro.
Awesome. Amy, share us a little about your story and who you are.
Thanks, Andrea. Glad to be here. And I am Amy Voris, and I was an ADHD coach before I learned about tiny habits from a couple of my clients. And I was like, wait, what is this thing? And so about a year and a half ago, I read the book and I'm like, I need that. And really what it is it's given a formalization to a lot of the breaking things down into smaller pieces that I've done kind of instinctively for a lot of years, but I never realized that that was a coping strategy for ADHD. And but Tiny Habits was cool because it gave me a much more formal way of working through it. And it's something that is a little bit easier to teach instead of just shooting in the dark, which is, there's still some benefit to it, but to be able to show people what I'm doing. And this has become even more important because I've got some underlying health issues and some other odds and ends that really keep the brain fog. Some days are good, some days aren't. And without the ability to learn shine like I've done in Tiny Habits, I actually have a much better way to impact my mood and some other understanding of what I'm doing.
Awesome. Stephanie, bring us home.
All right. I'm Stephanie Markuski. I'm an ADHD life coach and Tiny Habits coach. I was diagnosed after my son was diagnosed. And I'd actually done Tiny Habits, the 5-day program, several years before and was pleased at how it worked. And I started to really get back into it and realize the scientific connection in the brain. I'm like, hey, that would be a perfect addition to my ADHD coaching. I actually pivoted careers, changed careers completely. My background is construction project management, and it's difficult with ADHD to stay on that path. So this gives me a lot more purpose in life. And my favorite one is, and long before, is I will put my key ring on my command center as soon as I walk in the door, so I don't lose it.
So after I walk in the door,
Yes,
I will put my key ring on your command center. Awesome. And that's one tiny habit recipe. You guys can try that. Now, if you don't have a place to put your keys, it might take a one-time behavior for you to put something there, but after that, you're good to go. So what we want to do right now is we actually want to take your questions. So I know a few of you have put some things in the chat, but also if you guys want to, because the chat is very robust, also we'll put your questions in the Q&A and we will go from there because our panel of experts is here to help you. So first question, any tools to assist individuals with ADHD? Whoever typed that, maybe we might want to need a little more color on that one. What do you mean by, do we have a specific situation?
Well,
how about
general question? I think it's a general question that people with ADHD ask all the time. I don't know if you guys all agree.
See, well, there you go. This is my, I learn when I do these.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think we've all asked this question because you're kind of in this place where you feel the overwhelm of the day, and you know that you are capable of a lot, and that's actually the flip side of ADHD, which hopefully everyone on this call knows. But if you don't, that it's a superpower as well as being something that you might struggle with. You just have to figure out how to make it work. And I think that general question is, I get it all the time. So I mean, we maybe could just go down the line and not say like our favorite tool.
Yeah, let's do that. And I think that this is, first of all, this is a great learning because what you've done, Sharon, is really put some color around that for me and for other people in the lives of people who are managing symptoms of ADHD, right? That this is really common due to the factors that you discussed. And so let's go down the line because you guys know and share one tool that you like. Do you want to start,
I'll
Sharon?
go first because I actually have a physical aid. So this is a timer. You've probably seen ones that look like a pair of dice, and you just literally there's different time increments here. So this is 5. I use the 5-minute one all the time. You just turn it and it starts counting down for 5. It probably looks backwards to you all. So one of my tiny habits is I struggle with tidying and kind of staying on top of my stuff, and I get really down on myself about it because I think it's this big thing I have to do. So one of my tiny habits is after I walk into my office, I will turn on my 5-minute timer, and then I'll tidy usually during that time. Or if it's already tidy, which isn't usually the case, then I'll like stretch or do something for myself.
Awesome. Jeff, what's your favorite tool?
You know, just, what comes to mind listening to this is, if you have ADHD, you have a lot of sort of pushes and pulls mentally. There's a lot that will occur to you. And one of my biggest challenges, personally, is I'll start one thing and then my brain goes, "Are you sure you shouldn't be doing this other thing?" And if I switch to that, my brain will go, "What about this other thing? You think about this?" And one of the formats we'll use in Tiny Habits, right, is a starter step, which is simply the process of, if you're going to read a book, it's not about how much you read. You simply open the book. If you're going to sit down and meditate, it's not about how long you meditate. It is simply sitting down to do it. And the magic of this stuff is if you give yourself an opportunity to just do that when it occurs to you, you can actually be pretty fluid. And that will allow you to just transition. All right, I feel like reading. Okay, go do it. Because even if you just spend 2 minutes in it, first of all, the type of brain you have will allow you to extract more value than most people. We've got special stuff too, right? It's not all, it's just about leveraging that. And so the question you want to ask is, for anything that repeatedly appears, for anything that is a consistent theme in my life, have I taken away all the friction for myself to just engage in a starter step? So that's a little more high level, but I'll just say, so if you have a book that you like and you have an exercise implement, and this is all sort of around you, and and one of the kind of traits too is of ADHD is common as sort of object permanence. If I don't see it, I forget about it. So if it's right there, when it occurs to you, you can simply use a starter step. And whatever happens from there, you're golden. Because if you have the motivation and there's a value there, it will very organically flow. And you have all the freedom in the world to switch quickly.
Awesome. So couple recipes there. After I see my book, I will open it. After I see my meditation cushion, or my meditation chair, I will sit down in it. It's not about the time, but it's just about doing that and then celebrate. Amy.
I asked what a starter step was. What's the definer?
Yeah. And you know what? It's just, you don't actually have to know our terminology. You just have to know it's not about how much you're doing. It's about the thing you do before you're doing it. And that counts too toward building the habit. Stephanie,
I've got my mic open, Stephanie, sorry to start over you. But I'm gonna sort of piggyback back between what Sharon and Jeff shared, and that a lot of it for me with ADHD is realizing that I've got to be a whole lot more specific about what I'm trying to do than, an intention is good, a really broad thought, but it's like exercising more. Well, what does that mean? And I spend a lot of time working with people and going, what do you mean? And I think people get tired of it, but it's like we think in very general associative terms. And so sometimes problem solving down to get really specific can be really helpful as well. And so how do we make things easier? How do we chunk it down? Well, you have to get really clear about what you're actually trying to do before you can chunk it down. Kind of like Jeff said, if you're getting to the book, okay, well, you want to read a book. Do you know where the book is? Do you know what the book is? And then opening it is a good start. Having a timer, I have a different one that I like that's a little bit of a variation on what Sharon had, but using that and giving myself permission just to do things for a little bit of time and making it mentally easier is probably my favorite general tool, even though that's not a real specific mantra.
Fantastic. Stephanie, you want to hop in? And
Yes. So my tool, I have to have, if it's a really important appointment that's coming up, I do need a reminder, but I also really like to have my planner itself, and I need a disc bound planner so I can pop things in and take it out and all of that. I need the physical planner to think about time and plan backwards that way. Whereas the electronic things, those will remind me when it's happening or a little bit before when it's going to happen. But I cannot live without a physical planner as well. I need both.
Well, and I think that that is that regardless of ADHD, but maybe it's a real personal thing that some people do need to see it physically and have those multiple levels. And I think there's a judgment around self-judgment that can happen too, that if you have to do something a certain way that everyone's not doing it, that there must be something wrong with you. And I will categorically say that that is not the case. If it works for you, work it. First maxim of behavior design is to help people do what they already want to do. So for yourself, you're going to change that and say, I'm going to help myself do what I already want to do. And if that means having a physical planner, I do not have ADHD, but I'm creative and I have a physical planner, right? I love to see the way it looks. It makes me feel empowered. And second maxim of behavior design is help people feel successful. And that means for you listening, help yourself feel successful. So for Stephanie and for me, a regular planner in addition to a digital one is helping me feel successful. I want to address a couple housekeeping issues. We are a small team here. I know we feel really big, like we must have, 50 people behind us, but it's really just us. And we do want to have closed captioning. I thought that they were already on. Unfortunately, they are not, and I apologize. We appreciate the links and we're working to do that behind the scenes, but sometimes when you're on Zoom, it's a challenging to have it do what you want it to do. So we're working to get that rectified. Second of all, the slides will be available with 3 Tiny Habits recipes from each of these coaches. And because we're so robust here, there's been plenty more, but there is a replay. The link is already in your invitation, but you will get a reminder that the panel is ready. They are all on one page right now, tinyhabitsacademy.com/panels. This one obviously is not there now, but will be. So you will be able to rewatch this in your own time, at your leisure, and take as many notes as you want. Pause it where you want, write down what you want, and digest it and really integrate it so that you can do this in your own time. And maybe Jen, you want to pop that link. I'm a little behind on the chat. Maybe you already did pop the link to where it will be. So if you guys want to bookmark it, there's also other panels that we did there on anxiety. Someone was mentioning about anxiety. We did a whole panel on that last year in 2021. So you don't have to manage your anxiety just with meditation if you're not a meditator. So don't worry about that. All right, let's look at, so thank you for putting that panel in there, Jen. So next question, how can I be a good learner with ADHD? And I think that that is a really common question for people because they don't learn in a very typical way. And they probably have some self-judgment around that. So coaches, what would you say to how can they be? Hop in.
Right. I appreciate it. I've actually had an opportunity to teach adults in a college, a junior college situation, if you will. But all of us have probably have different sensory processing issues. They are comorbid with ADHD. They don't have to be. But so it really starts with you finding out what your best learning way is. I am not somebody who takes in information through my ears. But if I do have to, if I'm in a lecture hall, I have to take copious notes. So I'm somewhere between a kinetic and a visual learner, and putting those two together is the biggest thing for me. That is how I do well. But today in college, you should be able to, depending on your teacher, you should be able to have things like Otter AI or other kinds of transcription services where you can take the notes electronically, or you can record what they're saying and replay it back later. I know that for myself, if I were to take an online course, I actually have to watch the video faster because I can't listen to people talk in a normal way. It doesn't matter who they are, they're going too slow. I gotta watch it faster. Sorry. So it really is.
I don't think you're alone in that. Anybody else need to listen to things faster? See, Amy needs to listen to it. Sharon, they all need to listen. Okay. So if you're listening here and you need to put things faster, or maybe you don't know that tip, well, give that a try. Lots of plus ones on that. Okay. So you're not alone. You can plan that to your liking. And know that that's okay. And certainly transcription services are many out there so that you can use those as well to help you with that. Let's
the other thing for a student, and maybe probably anyone with ADHD, is procrastination, right? Like that's such a common trait with everyone on this panel, I'm sure, and in the participant pool. And I don't think there's an easy fix for this. I think it's kind of trying to figure out what works best for you. One thing that I've seen work well with members of ours is trying to just focus, like every morning, create a tiny habit for deciding on one big thing. And we actually call it like OBT with our members, one big thing that you will do that day. And it allows you to just focus. It's something you don't want to see the light of day tomorrow. And it could be a dentist appointment you need to book, or it could be a 30-minute study session. And just having, obviously, an accountability partner can help with that. But so if you have a study buddy or someone else who you guys can text your one big thing to, it kind of takes that to-do list and calendar safety net that Stephanie was talking about and boils it down to just one thing, which can be a good gateway.
Yeah. And I'll just jump in and say that I've worked with so many students, and it's really individualized. You're probably going to be better when you're interested in something. We don't always have the ability to take classes we're interested in. And this is, again, getting a little bit more away from tiny habits, but so much of it is, how are you going to set up your workspace? What kind of, other tools, technologies can you use to support, whether that's, have you planned out what you're doing specifically? And part of your habit is, have I sat down and planned my homework for today? Where am I getting stuck? Where do I not understand what's going on?
Break that down for us a little bit, right? Because I think for someone who is listening here, that sounds like, yes, I want to do that. And then squirrel, right?
Yes.
So, and that sounds very doable, right? So break it down with, how are you going to actually plan for that?
So if I'm working with somebody, and this often becomes a combination of behavior design and tiny habits, behavior design is the overarching piece of how do we break things down. And it's a combination of habits and one-time actions. So with somebody, when I'm working with them, we'll probably go sit. First, you're going to have to clear a time to do it, which is a habit in and of itself. Is it after I eat lunch? After I finish my last class for the day? After I have gone and worked out, like Jeff is talking about, because your brain's on, your brain's firing. So first off, you've got a time. Then you've got to clear your distractions so you don't have your phone going off, your friends knocking on the dorm door, your kid harassing you to know what's for dinner, depending on your age. And then I'll probably work with somebody to go, okay, what are your 4 classes? Have you opened up and looked at specifically what is due for each class? So going to the online program, listing out everything. And then the habit of, does this match your energy? When is your energy highest? Or because certain types of things require different types of energy. And so energy matching is another habit that I love to do, is what kind of, when I sit down, I will ask myself, what is my energy like? And pick a task accordingly.
And that's a great tiny habit recipe as well. After I sit down, I will ask myself, what is my energy like? And then you can pick the task that matches your energy. And that dovetails with behavior design and tiny habits method very well, because it's all about matching your behavior to your motivation. Unlike what we've been taught prior to BJ Fogg's groundbreaking research, where you try to power through and motivate yourself more, and maybe even punish yourself or give yourself an incentive. What you do now is leverage your low motivation by picking something very tiny. And then you harness your high motivation by picking those harder things when your energy is higher, which is what you just described. So matching your behavior is going to be key for you guys. And that's a great tiny habits recipe. All right, let's, in the chat we have, or I mean, in the Q&A. So this one is basically around trouble with financial documents, paying taxes, sending in invoices, but I think we could just as easily, you know, insert a few other things like life skills, right?
Let's just call it boring stuff. How about that?
Boring stuff. Let's just call it boring stuff. Jeff, how do we handle the boring stuff?
You know, I know this is my experience, and I know that I'm not alone. There are a lot of things that we feel on paper should be easy or should be very doable. Simply don't feel that way. That's not our experience. And so step one is stop beating yourself up about it if that's the case. And so what I've found is there are a couple of things. The first question is, can I outsource this? Can I delegate it? Can I get support with it? Don't look at it in an absolute from an absolute standpoint, or hold yourself up to whatever you think an external standard is. Just roll with what you've got. From there, if there is still stuff that you find kind of tedious or that is hard to focus on. So we talked about matching, what you're working on with the energy level you have. The other thing that I want to mention here is you have the ability to determine how you're feeling and what, and the kind of energy and focus you want to show up with. And I think that, and this is one of the habits I have in the deck. When you put something into your calendar, one of the questions you can ask is, how do I need to feel? Like, how do I want to show up to this thing? And so a small dose of exercise leading up to an activity that requires a high level of persistence or focus can be absolutely transformative. So if you're asking yourself to go in cold to something that has that kind of steep and slippery slope to climb, it's going to be a struggle. If you give yourself an opportunity to feel the way, right? So pay attention to what works for you when you are at your best. And again, exercise can not only be transformative, it doesn't take very long. It can really be 2 or 3 minutes to give yourself a much greater chance of being able to apply yourself to a task. So just another way to sort of say that you can reverse engineer by recognizing the way you want to show up and how you're going to best feel and perform. You can create space for that so that you can show up and kind of be at your best for that particular task.
And I think that dovetails really well with what Amy was talking about checking in with your energy. And it sounds like too, that the moment of awareness is really key for everyone here, and anything you can do to harness that moment of awareness. We started this panel with, after I sit down at my computer, I will take a drink of water. That requires the moment of awareness that, oh, I did sit down and now I'm going to do this. So for all of these, that gives you the little bit of breathing room where you have agency over your next task. And even I forgot about that, but I became aware of it and I pivoted and we refocused and moved on. So these are all parts that you'll play with. I want to address celebration because a couple people have been talking about celebration. And in Tiny Habits Method, it's not just about chunking down. If I had to pick one big myth or misconception about Tiny Habits Method, it would be this. People would say, I would share that with them, and they would say, oh yeah, I make things smaller too, and I chunk them down. This is beyond chunking down. It's about going so tiny that you don't need willpower, motivation, or discipline to do it. But it's also about how your brain wires things in. And that is the what we call, what BJ calls celebration. And why don't you address celebration and maybe have some celebrations for non-celebrators? How would you encourage people to celebrate, or what would you share with someone that says celebration doesn't work for me? Because I know I hear that all the time.
It's still the hardest thing for me, for
Yeah.
sure. I think that my celebration, I think you should have to find something that's organic to you, something that you would genuinely do. Like, what would you do if you shot a basket and it went in? Like, what's your natural behavior? And I think my natural behavior was like looking at somebody I knew and like smiling about it, like having a human connection about it. So if available, that's my go-to celebration. So if my thing is the kitchen thing, like filling up a glass of water in the kitchen, then I'll tell my son, I just filled up a glass of water. And just having a moment with another human has been the most organic when available. When not available, if it's a bathroom habit, like flossing or anything like that, high-fiving the mirror it feels less kooky than high-fiving yourself like this. And it actually gives you a bit of a social charge of energy. But I think the overarching thing, and I think this is true of ADHD folks, probably more than neurotypical folks, I would venture to say, is that we have trouble celebrating because we've spent our lives judging ourselves for feeling like we're not living up to our potential. Like, I'm smart, but I didn't do my homework. I know this material, but I did bad on this test, and kind of all these stories throughout your life. For me, as I was a tech executive, and like reading a legal document was like the hardest thing I possibly could have to do that day. And I think that when you have, it's almost, I would challenge you to use this as a way to break the cycle for yourself, and actually I think you're resisting it because I know I was resisting it because I was more comfortable judging myself than I was just giving myself a simple, you did 5 minutes of exercise and that was the whole habit. So good fucking job. Sorry.
Can I jump in on this? I just think what Sharon said is so important. And, celebration. Yeah. If you're a natural celebrator and you're effusive and you dance and you sing and this all feels pretty authentic, yes, do it. But we're not saying celebrate in a way that does not feel authentic. And I think if there is, there's no gene you can pinpoint ADHD on. There's no area of the brain that you can image and say, okay, this is what we've got. It is very nebulous. It is a cluster of symptoms. It is a statistical likelihood of being a certain way. These are things that all humans share that just have a little more prevalence here. But what I can tell you is that if you are not neurotypical, we're speaking to ADHD folks in particular here, then you felt those frictions when school, like the kind of brain that you have, wasn't the perfect fit for school, wasn't the perfect fit to maybe shove into a cubicle. And so your life in a lot of respects has been defined by what you're not good at. And these are, sometimes, when somebody has an injury, sometimes they just keep checking it. Like, does it hurt when I go here? We only know the injury when we find the borders of it. And we have to give that stuff a rest. And I think one of the most important things we can share with you today is celebration here is not about a pat on the back so much as developing, we want to be like truffle pigs for signals of success, right? And living our principles and what's important to us. And so it is absolutely essential as you re-navigate and reestablish your identity of all the things, and there are a million things you're really good at and like uniquely, oddly good at, but these aren't messaged in a mainstream way. So the only person that's really going to figure out this kind of very subtle level of expertise is you. So when you notice that you are living your value, when you notice that you're being successful in a unique way, to simply affirm that and say, hey, I'm doing this. First of all, that's a form of celebration. but it's celebration as a skill, because as you get better at identifying these things, you're going to come to them faster and more frequently and really flesh out the unique abilities that you have, and all the special stuff that makes your brain what it is.
And I think that one of the really most important points that you both shared here is that celebration is a skill, just like anything else. And the cool thing about skills is that a skill means you can learn it. So this is natural for some people, not natural for other people. I will share what I often hear is a very good solution for people who are typically non-celebrators or feel awkward. And that is to use a statement that is about who you are. Like, maybe if you struggle with putting things away, you naturally think about yourself as someone who is messy. But every time you put something away, a celebration can be as simple as saying to yourself in your head or out loud, I'm the type of person that puts things away. Or I'm becoming the type of person that puts things away. Because it's not so much what you do, it's how you feel inside. So what you want to do is just find some way that you can feel good about what you've just done, right?
Well,
And is, if you are putting stuff away, you are becoming the type of person that's putting things away. Amy.
And Andrea, what I actually had to start with is apparently I have a real issue with celebration. I was very self-critical. I actually started by going to neutral. I did what I said I was going to do.
I'm the type of person that
didn't
does
get to shine.
do. Yeah.
Well, we just, instead of, because that felt way too far. But by going to neutral and acknowledging I did what I intended to do was actually massive for me. And I think a lot of us with ADHD struggle with those 20,000 plus negative messages we've gotten before we even hit high school compared to other kids. So if we can move to neutral, even that can be a massive shift.
And I think that is part of the skill, right? So if we were, I'm not sporty, but if I were playing soccer or football, if you're watching other parts of the world, then I'm not sporty. I would not expect myself to be making goals all the time. But what I might be able to do is like, hey, I got my cleats on and I got out on the field and I tried. Right. So setting the bar that's an appropriate way for you, where you guys are. Neutral might be where you need to go. Just removing self-judgment or that might be the best thing you can do for yourself. And then you can move on. And that's all part of the skill, is what I'm hearing here from our experts, is that's part of the skill. Get yourself to neutral, then you can move beyond, because self-judgment is not going to help you, right? Well, you change best by feeling good. Self-judgment is actually, and negative thoughts are in our chat here. So let's help people with those as well. What do you guys do for that?
I don't know. I apologize. I'm not going to be able to get past it until I actually get it out of my head. But the fake it till you make it thing is really important to understand. Even if you're faking a celebration, your brain, and remember, our brains are much more wired to live in the amygdala. If you fake a celebration, you're still going to release the dopamine. It might take longer for you to get to it. And I do want to pop in and say that there is something called the 30-second dance party button, kind of like the easy button. And if you need to get something like that and bring it with you, and you hit it and you do a 30-second dance party or something like that to get yourself the celebration, have something outside of you give you that celebration. You have to do it, even if it feels stupid, to get the chemicals moving. Now I'm done.
Right. And that's a great, and you know what, like that is a great step for people, is to just do that, anything to get things going. So, I'm so appreciative. I think we're learning that if we do something on ADHD, it maybe needs to be longer than an hour, but we do have time to go through things. I want to take a moment, and this is something that I'm curious about from you guys. Because here's our session and we're all ramped up, we're asking things, where it's high energy and it feels great, but does it feel overwhelming for you? And do you think it might feel overwhelming for those who are participating? And part B, do you think we should take a moment to just breathe and center? Is this something that would be helpful to someone who has ADHD?
I mean, I think that folks who are here hopefully will walk away, and maybe if we haven't gotten here, we should, all these ideas can feel like a lot, but the good news is you can start really small. Like my personal journey was, I knew that exercise helped me so much. I knew that I felt better every day that I did it. But for most of my life, I haven't exercised every day. And I made a tiny habit of, after the alarm goes off, I will put one foot on the floor. That was my only habit. That was all I did. And in doing that, it's uncomfortable because the bed's kind of high, right? So the foot's on the floor. I would usually get out of bed, and I would usually, the only thing I would do would be to exercise. And I'm talking 15 minutes, 20 minutes of exercise. And a year later, it has transformed my life. Like, not just like weight or anything. I feel better every day. Some days I'm sick and I put my foot back, but I don't judge myself for it because I know that I did my thing. And I know that's kind of different than what you're asking me, Andy, but I feel like the point is, it is overwhelming. It is. But the good news is you can pick one thing and just start there and just give yourself permission to have a small win, like a foot touching a floor can be your win tomorrow if that's what you choose.
And I think that is the feeling of success that we all want everyone to have here.
Right.
Like if listening to this, if you pick one thing that that really resonates with you and you can feel success over it, how many coaches would feel that that's a good start for anyone and that they are on the path, right? You started.
And that's hard to remember. I mean, because we're used to go big or go home. I mean, and
right.
So
let's talk about that. Let's
enough.
talk about go big or go home. I mean, really, I don't think it's really solely related to people who are managing ADHD. However, I think it's worthy of addressing in this panel because you're correct. Let's talk.
So I apologize for busting in, but I cannot get the thought in my head of there's an executive in charge of functions living in the front part of my brain, and he has his feet up on the desk and he's ignoring all the work that needs to get done. And you've got all these people bringing big boxes on dollies around the warehouse or whatever. Again, I'm so sorry. Big thoughts. But tiny habits and thinking tiny helps me reduce the size of the speed bumps that are in the way of all of these people carrying the dollies, getting the stuff done. And that's the big thing for me is that the tiny helps reduce the size, because obviously my executive in charge of functions sucks. And so I need that help. So sorry.
First of all, you're here being of great service to people. So there is no need to apologize because people really are resonating with what you're saying, and people are just like you. You are just like everyone else, right? So the size of the speed bumps, maybe there are mountains that you might have crashed into, and now there are little speed bumps that you can manage. And this is none of what we're saying is going to wave a magic wand and have you magically have no symptoms of ADHD to manage. However, they will expand your capacity to handle what's overwhelming, to do what you need to do the boring tasks, and to move beyond self-judgment. So I want to circle back to self-judgment and talk about maybe, and then I want to go to you, Jeff, because someone asked about deficit in nature and meaning and purpose. So I'm giving you time to gear up on that, Jeff. So let's talk about some strategies for dealing with self-judgment, negative self-judgment, because no one's really judging themselves going, I'm judging you as fantastic. They're really usually saying something like, why did I do that? I can't believe this is the way I am. I can't believe I've done this again. What do you guys share? What do you have to help people in managing this self-judgment?
A Pearl habit is a great option for that.
Share a Pearl habit that you use, and Pearl habits are usually just something. It's something you do in Tiny Habits method and behavior design, where you take something negative and turn it into a positive, much like a pearl coming out of an oyster. But you don't have to remember that. What you need to remember is maybe what?
So after I find myself judging myself, kicking myself, fill in the blank, I will. So this is our habit recipe. After I identify that I'm feeling this way, I will. It could be something like take 3 deep breaths. It could be something like write down one good thing I did that day, or one thing I'm grateful for that day. Just something to bring you back.
Awesome. Anything else that you guys do to combat negative self-talk?
I actually really like the double inhale. If anyone here listens to the Huberman Lab podcast, it actually does a reset on your nervous system. And you basically breathe in most of the way and then take another tiny breath to expand your lungs. And then when you breathe out all the extra carbon dioxide, and your body actually calms down. And usually when we're in self-judgment, we're kind of in this state of heightened anxiety. And so doing things to physically calm your body. My favorite saying out of the Huberman Lab podcast is, don't use your brain to impact the brain, but use your body to impact your brain.
And I think that is what I know from Jeff. He really has learned early on in his life to use movement for his focus. And before he even knew that he had ADHD. And I think that is very confirmatory to get people out of the cycle of what's going on in their brain and their brain managing their brain. Jeff, do you want to piggyback on that and then talk about your comment earlier about ADHD being a deficit in nature and I'm going to get it wrong, meaning and purpose? Did I get that?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Yeah, so to speak about movement, and I think and physical sensation and breathing is without a doubt your most accessible way. And you have to bear in mind that there's a lot of thought that the human brain, as it exists, is primarily developed for movement. And so what I believe is your physical sensations, which you can amplify through pressure. You can amplify through breathing. You can amplify through load from, say, strength training. This is as close as we can get to right now. When we talk about presence and mindfulness, what we're really doing is taking ourselves out of the past, taking ourselves out of the future and existing in the present. And that's still pretty abstract, but what you are feeling with your body, if you pay attention to the weight of your feet on the ground or the weight of your bum in your seat, if you take a breath and notice what changes within your body, that is you experiencing the present. When in the context of a deficit for nature, movement, meaning, I think back to a study I looked at one point. They took a bunch of athletes and they said, hey, how much protein do we have to give these athletes for them to gain muscle? Some people only took a little. Most of them took the standard amount without getting into the weeds about it. And a small group of people needed about twice the standard amount, right? There is genetic variation, even, with everyone. So the amount of movement, say, that enough people typically need to get by, or I think meaning is the most salient here. A lot of people are like, whatever. I was talking to a musician friend this morning. He said a lot of musicians will just play. They're trained to play whatever music is put in front of them. But very few truly interrogate and ask, like, what do I love? Like, what music really speaks to me? What inspires me? And the folks that are able to tune into that have a much more sort of meaningful interaction. And I would say for folks like us, if you have ADHD, it's not a nice to have, it is a must have. Like, I cannot do things that I do not care about. I cannot do things where it's like, oh, congratulations, you built a business on, direct to landfill plastics that are going to be used for 10 seconds. For better or for worse, I will never be able to do that kind of thing. And I suspect a lot of the folks listening are the same way. So it is so important for you to tune in to what your values are. What is really significant, we need more time in nature, going out. It is inherently calming and regulating to do that. We need more time in exercise in the sense that it is present, it provides presence and grounding, but also if you have stress hormones running through your body, you cannot outthink them. They need to be dissipated, and that is best done through movement. So I could go on and on, but I hopefully I captured the main points here.
Yeah, I think you captured them really well. So what I want to do now is go to our Tiny Habits recipe slides. We will take another question or two after this. So we're going to go share one recipe. We've shared a ton, but let's each share one recipe, and that can be helpful. Oops. To everyone. Sharon, which is your favorite recipe on here that you want to go into?
I've somehow shared almost, I think, all these in my time, the time on the panel. But I think I would say I would focus on number 3. I think that this has been the hardest one for me because I've functioned and I've become successful in my career by being able to just kind of like take stuff in and just react and get stuff done. But there are moments in our lives where that things aren't flying at you, and you do have to have that kind of presence of mind to decide what to do next. And I'm someone who I would rather start a startup than like pay my dental bill by phone. Like these are like the easy things are hard for me and the hard things are easy for me. And so with that awareness, and I think we've talked a lot about being overwhelmed, starting super small, it has helped me a lot. And so coming up with literally, there are a list of things like this that I need to do today, but forcing myself that once I sit down at my desk to just write one thing is pretty transformative and does take practice, but is a good habit.
Thank you. Let's see who's next. Jeff.
Okay, so I know I spoke about kind of designing for feels, right? We so often just kind of wedge work in, and if you're like me, you've tried and failed many times to wedge and like plan for every minute of the day, which doesn't work. So we're going to try to design for feels. But the one I'm going to mention here is the first one. So after I notice that I'm struggling to focus, this is just a practice that I've used. I will take a breath, but I will just take in my surroundings. If you are feeling kind of under threat or anxious, one of the best things you can do is really just appraise what's going on. Where am I? Now, as it turns out, I built this environment. I'm surrounded by plants. I'm in a space that I'm very comfortable in. But so by taking this in and knowing I'm actually safe here, I'm good, it is inherently calming. After that, and this isn't tiny to stack these on, so I would just leave it there. But once you're good at that, what I've added on to that is, then I will check in with myself and just see how my body's feeling. And I'll just return to it.
That's really important that we're sharing the tiny bits, but each of these coaches, these can grow bigger. Any tiny habit recipe doesn't have to stay tiny. You'll keep that will be your bar forever and ever, even if you do grow it. But all of these coaches have shared their tiny habit recipes that they started and grew. And Jeff just explained how you could grow this recipe, but we want to give you some success right away. So try that to start. Stephanie.
All right. So number 3 doesn't work for me quite well enough yet. Still working on it. But
so wait, are you telling us you're human here? Are you telling us that all your habits are not perfect?
Yes.
That's something we've heard from every single coach, and I will share that it's true for me too, that we work on our habits. Right? It's not like, even though we are coaches and even though we practice tiny habits method all the time, it doesn't mean that every habit that we do is magically correct. We know the principles of it. And so we can revise and we can work on it and we can keep going and make it work for us. And you can do that too. So Stephanie, share.
All right. So when I feel frustrated with someone, I will take one deep breath and count to 5 and go, that's so much better. Because I'm trying to calm my amygdala, which wants to answer before my frontal lobe catches it. But if I at least take a deep breath and wait 5 seconds, half of what I wanted to say might have settled down, maybe not. So that's my favorite one.
And I can already tell just from you sharing that makes you feel good.
A little bit.
Amy.
Oh, these were all just various odds and ends that I've done, but I'm working from home now, but for a long time, what I did before I realized it was a recipe is after I make my lunch for work, I will put my keys in the fridge with my lunch. And that was, yeah, just kind of, so I didn't have to look for them. I found my keys the night before, and then I'm likely to take my lunch with me to work because my fridge is there. The one that's a little bit more abstract is number 3. But after I notice I'm avoiding work, I will I'll ask myself why, using the acronym HALT, and I actually added an O onto it. Traditionally, HALT is hungry, angry, lonely, tired. With ADHD, we add overwhelm. And then you can start problem solving from there.
And that is a great check-in on that too, to add that hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or overwhelmed. So there's been so first of all, we did not get to all the questions, even though we wanted to. I'm gonna ask you coaches, we'll debrief afterwards. There's plenty of questions in the Q&A. Maybe we can create a document that we can share on the panel page and you can answer some of these more fully on that, because we really do want to be of service today. I want to share where people can find you guys and more information. But after that, I also want to answer a question of how do you handle someone in your life who's important to you who has ADHD, and what might you do for that. But first, in the chat already are the links to where you can find all these ADHD coaches and to the programs that we're going to show. And then Jen, if you can screen share what it looks like at tinyhabitsacademy.com. We have the coaches in the link. So maybe we just do the last 3. If you want to join the 5-day program, you're going to click on that yellow button right there at the bottom right, and it will take you to the 5-day program, totally free, no strings attached. We really teach you get a live coach behind the scenes to help you form habits fast. If you want to reach out to some of these coaches and ask them if they have a 5-day program or they would coach you through it, the link is in the chat there. Also, you can find all of them here. If you didn't catch the links to them, you can go to find a Tiny Habits certified coach. And then if you are like many of the people who I've seen in the chat and who are back channeling us, you want to become a coach yourself because you want to do this for other people and help them have the success that these coaches have, it's also there on Get Certified. And you can see BJ there, who is our fearless leader, and Linda Fogg Phillips, who is his sister, who runs the Tiny Habit Academy. So this is where you can get more help. You can also reach out to these coaches if you feel a vibe, so that you can get the support that you need. BJ, if you're around, do you want to say anything? I don't know if you're in a place where you can talk. If not, we will we will continue, or you can just ping me.
He wrote, thanks everyone for being here. No need for me to speak up.
Awesome. There you go. Thanks for I'm managing a lot over here. So thank you, BJ, for being here. So coaches, for our final question, because we do want to wrap on time, what do you say to support someone who needs to support someone with ADHD in their lives? How would you have them support them?
Really, the biggest thing for me is we have a different brain structure, and it all goes back to the fact that something isn't engaging our frontal lobe yet. We're stuck in the limbic system, in the amygdala. It is not that we don't want to. I mean, I don't know how many, you can hook us up to what is it called the FBI uses to check if you're lying? Yes, oh my gosh, sorry about that. Anyways, you can set us up with a lie detector and we will absolutely positively think that we are going to be able to do this. We will promise you the world, we're going to do this. We want to. It literally is not going to happen, and unless we learn how to design to prompt us to do it. The prompt is really easy to miss, you know, and there are ways stuff will fall apart. It's not that we don't want to. We love the people around us and we want to make them happy, and it may not happen, and things just fall like a Jenga. One little thing was missed here, one little thing was missed here, and the whole thing falls apart and nobody's happy. So understanding our brain structure and understanding how to work around our brain structure is what's important when you're living with another person with ADHD.
So it really sounds like there's a modicum of compassion, right? So what you've just highlighted is people who are managing symptoms of ADHD really do have good intentions, like many people do, but it's a little more likely that they're gonna forget and need a reminder. And the fact that they need a reminder is not necessarily any type of indication that they don't want to do, that they have something against you, that something's going on for them that makes it personal. So after you feel frustrated with your partner, spouse, significant other, someone in your life who has ADHD, maybe take a deep breath and remember to have a little compassion, and then help them set up their environment so that they can remember and be prompted.
And I would say I think it's like the second to last chapter, read the whole book of Tiny Habits, but
yes,
I forget which chapter it is. Toward the end, and it's about like building habits with others, building habits as groups. And
change together.
I just think it'd be such a valuable tool. My husband has ADHD too, so it's hard sometimes. And I think that we both have to find that understanding for each other, but just being able to understand the building blocks that you could do, which basically is you need to help them feel good about what you want them to do. And so just find a way to do that.
Help them feel successful. So Tiny Habits book, you don't have to read the whole thing. You can see chapter 8. There are lots of resources. We did a book club where we taught you on Clubhouse. So the recording is there. You can listen to chapter 8 on Clubhouse. If you're on there, join the Tiny Habits club on Clubhouse. We taught that, so you don't have to necessarily read it, but really these coaches are really sharing a lot of valuable information. We'll debrief and see what we can't get to help you guys answer all the remaining questions in the chat, because we really want to be supportive of you. I want to thank you all for coming. I know many of you, it was like 2 a.m. and you were up listening for this. So we really, really appreciate you. I personally appreciate all the coaches coming and sharing their wisdom. There will be a recording. It will be at tinyhabitsacademy.com/panels, which we've put in the chat, but maybe we'll put that in the chat again. You'll get the recording and the slides, and you have access to all these coaches and to some other resources that are going to support you. Please try the 5-day program, because it really will help you design habits and feel some success. And you do get a live coach behind the scenes. There's no upsell here. It is really just our way of being service, because when we all believe that if you can design for behavior, you're going to be more successful, and success leads to success. So with that, thank you all for coming. Thank you, coaches. Thank you, participants. And we'll see you at our next panel. Cheers, everyone.